So colleagues, let's proceed to our next item on the agenda, and that's hearing on recent opportunities for the Metaverse. And it's open for the public, and the video will be also on the PACE website, I believe. So I'm pleased to welcome our speakers that are here. It's Ms. Irene Kitsara, European Standardization Initiatives Director, Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers, Austria, and Mr. Edward Levin, Vice President, Government and Public Affairs, the LEGO Group, United Kingdom. Thank you for coming, and we will have the video message from Ms. Monique Moreau, Chair of the IEEE Global Extended Reality Working Group and of IEEE Standard of Ethically Aligned Design and Operation of Metaverse Systems. Also, Professor Variety McIntosh, Researcher in Virtual and Extended Realities at the University of the West of England, Bristol, and member of the Digital Cultures Research Center, UK, who gave us a very interesting presentation at the last hearing in March, is with us today as an observer. And I will begin by giving the floor to our rapporteur, Mr. Andy Lucian Cristea, to give his introductory remarks. Please.
Thank you very much. Dear colleagues, let me start by thanking the guests we have today who accepted our invitation. And I have to say that we've put forward invitations for the big companies in the tech industry. And the thing is that it seems that they are focusing on other subjects for the time being. Dear colleagues, one of the challenges we face today is to keep society stable in the face of rapid technological change and to calibrate existing legal and institutional tools to help protect and promote democracy, human rights, and the rule of law. To this end, I believe it is essential to have a multi-stakeholder approach that involves governments, civil society organizations, the private sector, as well as international organizations. It is important to ensure that the benefits of technological advances are distributed fairly across society and that the negative impacts are mitigated, especially for the most vulnerable groups. The metaverse is a concept of social reality, more specifically computer-mediated reality, made possible by advancements in information technology and computational capabilities, paving the way for a new dimension of interconnected experiences and embodies the characteristics of an emergent process intrinsic to complex adaptive systems. It presents challenges in terms of conceptual and legal definitions, make it difficult to establish clear boundaries. Consequently, any predictions concerning its subsequent developments can only be made on a speculative basis, as the metaverse continues to evolve within the fluid and dynamic landscape of interconnected systems. The metaverse is a groundbreaking technology with immense potential to fundamentally transform the way people interact with society as a complex adaptive system. As interaction patterns shift, society itself changes, and this transformative impact extends to the way individuals engage with one another, as well as other economic, political, and social processes. If these interaction patterns undergo fundamental changes, the very fabric of society will be fundamentally reshaped, catalyzing comprehensive shifts across the entire societal structure. Moreover, the metaverse fosters the formation of decentralized, self-governing communities that operate beyond the control of centralized authorities or even tech platforms. This dynamic has the potential to weaken the grip of state-imposed identity systems and disrupt the existing societal structures, necessitating the re-evaluation of traditional identity management models. As the metaverse gains prominence, it is crucial for researchers and policymakers to examine its potential impact on the dissolution of post-industrial identity classifications and the subsequent ramifications on social organization, politics, and technology. A comprehensive understanding of these dynamics will be essential in devising adaptive strategies and frameworks that can accommodate the rapidly evolving landscape of human interaction and identity in the digital age. I could add that this very potent technology, this emergent technology, has a great potential to change the gatekeepers of our world. It's the institutions versus the platforms, it's the pyramid versus the network, and for the time being, we don't know how this technology will impact our world in 5, in 10 years, but it might impact us in a way and in a manner beyond what we can grasp for the time being. Thank you.
Mr. Christia, and now we will have the short video to play, and it was recorded by Ms. Monique Morrow, Chair of the IEEE Global Extended Reality Working Group and of IEEE Standard for Ethically Aligned Design and Operation of Metaverse Systems. It's a long, long title. So are we ready to play that video? Okay.
Hello, everyone. This is Monique Morrow, and I'm very happy to present to you with regards to the ethical concerns and polarities around the metaverse itself. We see a polarity between organizations that struggle to provide ethics, which are contextual, and also monetizing their own strategies. And what we have in terms of ethical concerns are what are the areas that we have to pay attention to, particularly around do no harm and safety when we live in these digital spaces. For example, we have to think about, when we think about safety, one of the concerns that I'm particularly looking at is the development perhaps of metaverse law. When something happens that is that does harm, for example, a gang rape, which has occurred, by the way, within the metaverse, what are the opportunities for metaverse justice? What are the concerns? How do we create a metaverse justice system, and how do we create metaverse law itself? What are the safety measures that we need to particularly look at? Because as we go look, we're not talking about gaming per se, we're talking about applications where we now live in sort of these dual or digital environments. And so the areas that we have to really look at are education for the metaverse. I would say also the areas around law itself, metaverse law, metaverse justice, trying to create these particular systems within our own owned infrastructure, perhaps within the ecosystem itself, to ask organizations or companies to apply ethics in a metaverse environment is perhaps asking too much. Why? Because there is a need for a framework, and this is why we're looking at a multi-stakeholder or multi-system or environment, which involves standardization. Organizations require these frameworks. And we see my colleagues in the IEEE presenting to you what is happening in the standards perspective. And by the way, there are other organizations that are looking at standards. So I think we do have an opportunity to really create these frameworks, but also think about how we look at metaverse justice, metaverse law, digital justice, and safety measures. And particularly when we're thinking about children in the metaverse, people in general living in this metaverse, and what harm looks like and what justice looks like. This is creating wonderful opportunities, but is also a polarity that we see in today's society. So I wish you all the very best in your interventions today, and look forward to speaking with you in person soon. Thank you.
Okay, so now we can proceed to the discussion and to give the floor to experts who participate in person. So first I give floor to Ms. Iran Kitsara, and her work at the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers is focused on the intersection of emerging technologies, standardization, and governance. She currently works on topics related to green and digital transformation, AI ethics, and related certification, and is leading a joint report with the Council of Europe on the Metaverse and its impact on human rights, the rule of law, and democracy. This report will explore inter alia the relevance of the existing Council of Europe instruments and the possible need for developing new ones to cover virtual realities. While she's in process of collecting expert contributions and conducting interviews, she kindly accepted our invitation to present the preliminary findings of the report to our committee, and we warmly thank you for that. And well, originally you could have 10 minutes, but since there are less people for the hearing, so you can take more, and of course during the questions time there will be some questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for the kind invitation to be with you today and discuss the work we are currently doing with another committee of the Council of Europe. We heard Monique Moreau, who has been chairing the IEEE Global Initiative on XR Ethics, which produced a series of white papers that we are also drawing from, and experts we are also drawing for. And she's also a contributor to the joint report we're working on. She talked about some areas of impact of the metaverse or immersive realities on education, mental health, and about the rule of law. So this report is a new form of cooperation, but it's not the first one for us with the Council of Europe. IEEE, which is also the largest technical association with over 400,000 members globally and around 80,000 in Europe, has been participating and contributing to the work of the CAHI and more recently on the Committee on AI for some time now. The IEEE brings together a body of leading technical experts experienced in developing global technical standards, but also socio-technical standards, thought leadership, and frameworks on AI ethics. So our work has been recognized by JRC as very relevant, for example, for the AI Act requirements. We also bring on robust methodologies in design and systems thinking, which we believe are going to be needed. So the report draws beyond the XR ethics work on metaverse standardization projects, the neurosciences and computer sciences communities, to name a few. We have brought together technical, policy, standardization experts, futurists, ethicists, and lawyers, while we are not, of course, the experts in human rights. This is where we understand and we believe that the partnership in this report is of particular interest. And we would like to, we wanted the experts to share their thoughts in the way that the metaverse is impacting human rights, the rule of law, and democracy, as it was mentioned, and provide their observations and considerations for the Council of Europe moving forward. The report will be launched on September 14 in Strasbourg, and in view of the time we have today and the stage we are at with the report, I would like to share with you some high-level observations and considerations based on our experts' contributions to the report. First of all, similar to AI, there is no consensus about terminology or definition of the metaverse. Terms like XR, VR, virtual or immersive worlds and realities, Web 3.0, digital twins are used sometimes nearly interchangeably, and the European Commission recently moved from using the term metaverse into virtual worlds and immersive realities. What we will call for ease of reference today, metaverse, can be viewed from an experience angle as a different universe from our physical world, so what we would call the group of the virtual reality technologies, a digital extension of our current worlds, so an augmented reality group of technologies, or a digital counterpart of our current universe, the digital twins. And there we see different stages and levels of each of these technologies. Some tend to see this from a functional perspective as the next iteration of the internet, while others are focusing much more on the use and the application. So they make the distinction between industrial or consumer metaverse. While focusing too much on the definition can be distracting, different definitions can lead to different scopes of regulation and create legal uncertainty. Finding a common understanding is important, and that could mean having an inclusive approach and accepting that the metaverse includes a range of scenarios, versions, and technologies which could be captured by regulation, could be the way forward. IEEE is currently working on a technical standard, for example, on nomenclature to provide definitions in an inclusive way. In that case, it may be more important focusing on the potential impact of the technology and range of related risks, along with the values and rights involved that we wish to thereby protect. A second point is that the metaverse, we talk about risk, but we should also not forget about the opportunities it offers to exercise a wide range of rights and bring benefits to different aspects of our life. It has potential to help, for example, vulnerable populations to access education, cultural life, or health services, and provide a customized and personalized experience allowing inclusion. At the same time, though, the same population is exposed to additional and increased risk about further discrimination and digital exclusion or an exacerbated digital divide. Another point that we should consider is the relationship of different rights framework and what this means. For example, one aspect of access to technology and inclusion is the access to what is nowadays a very expensive hardware. When we look at the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, the access to assistive technology is considered a recognized human right. So this could create an opportunity for some vulnerable populations if we consider the metaverse hardware to be assistive technology to give them an additional access. While we do not know how the metaverse will evolve and to what extent, we were just having a discussion on that, we do know that it is complex, with a series of enabling and underlying technologies like AI, VR, and blockchain. As such, we cannot view the metaverse in a vacuum independently from the underlying technologies. We can use some of the lessons learned from these technologies as they are linked to some concerns, understand the different technology implications within the metaverse context. In that respect, awareness raising and education will be key to create literacy, a common understanding, and related skills which will be important for inclusion moving forward. Some of the concerns we know from AI, for instance, will be exacerbated because of the immersive nature of the technology. Some new considerations are expected to come up, while we will also have to rethink a little bit how we define, perceive, and safeguard, for example, identity, reality, the reality of our selves, our surroundings and others, our choices, consent, agency, data, or, for example, how do we distinguish between public from private space? In view of the intrinsically pervasive nature and increased breadth of sensing, which is necessary for the immersive technologies to drive their key functionalities. The same unprecedented nature and volume of data collection and the intrusion to our homes, our network and minds creates greater risks to bystander privacy, mental privacy, and mental autonomy, for example, with new frontiers in manipulation and other risks. Another issue which has been identified by our experts was the complexity of deployment and enforcement of informants in the metaverse. For instance, the right to be forgotten or the attribution of liability. Some experts consider that existing regulatory and legal frameworks, which are more issues of purpose-specific or technology a neutral approach, or expressed broader, are covering sufficiently the effects and risks of the metaverse, while others expect the risk and impact of immersive realities to be so great that we would need to consider a new set of rights, like neuro rights, and also that we are facing the creation of new problem setting, such as access, management, and ownership of digital clones and data, for example, of deceased persons or bankrupt companies. There are also areas which would need further analysis, such as the impact on health, or how, talking about the rule of law, how IP rights and competition law will work in the metaverse space or impact the physical one. We are currently experiencing also a shift in paradigm. We are moving from content and agent management, what we have seen very strongly in AI, to behavioral and space management, while we still need to maintain our existing considerations in view of the fact that the technologies involved are still of relevance to the metaverse. Regulations, standards, and legislation are complementary. The global technical standards are voluntary and are a way of a soft governance, but can help provide, along with regulatory sandboxes in the field of metaverse, flexibility and adaptability while the technology develops, and help the implementation of regulatory requirements which can stay broader, providing robust criteria for compliance. We have seen in the last years the increasing importance of standards. There has been, Commissioner Breton has made a statement about the importance of standards in the metaverse, and we have seen also in the AI Act the reference to the standards as a way of implementing the requirements set forth on the AI draft. Still, despite the importance and relevance of standards, when red lines and reinforced protection of rights are needed, the role of legislation remains key. It remains the call of policymakers to balance and assess what will be needed moving forward. This partnership that we are currently having with the Council of Europe and the involvement of different and additional stakeholders will remain important moving forward to ensure common language, KPIs and principles, while ensuring that the technology remains human-centric and serves rather than jeopardizes our values, human rights, the rule of law and democracy. We look forward to welcoming you to the launch of the report and also to our dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kitsara, and now give the floor to Mr. Edward Lewin. He is the Vice President, Government and Public Affairs at the LEGO Group, and he is responsible for the LEGO Group's global engagement with governments, policymakers, and related communities to promote the LEGO brand vision to become a global force for learning through play. He's passionate about shaping a better world for children, their rights and well-being offline and online, and the role of play in inspiring and developing the builders of tomorrow. Mr. Lewin, we're grateful that you accepted our invitation and very much look forward to hearing more about the LEGO Group's strategy. And again, you might take more than 10 minutes in your speech. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Christer, distinguished members, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for inviting the LEGO Group to today's public hearing. We're honoured to be part of the Council of Europe's digital partnership, where we seek to advance children's rights and their well-being through the design of digital innovation and the laws that govern it. I'm proud to share that the LEGO brand celebrated its 90th year last year. It all started in Billund, a small town in Denmark, where our founder made his first wooden toy, and today Billund remains our global headquarters. Throughout our history, we have sought to build trust with parents, children and caregivers by consistently protecting children's rights, safety and well-being across every interaction we have with them, whether that's through our core product, which is the iconic LEGO brick, when we engage with children through digital play experiences, to when we work with our young fans on product testing and co-creation. We're now a global company present in more than 140 countries, constantly delivering on our mission to develop and inspire the builders of tomorrow through the power of play. And our promise to our role models, our children, is to create quality learning through play experiences that have a positive impact on lives, protecting their rights, building their skills, and fostering their well-being. Since 2015, we've benefited from a global partnership with UNICEF to embed children's rights and well-being across all our operations, and we've reached many milestones together. We were the first toy company to sign up to the Children's Rights and Business Principles. We introduced an industry-first digital child safety policy to secure the safety and well-being of children interacting with Lego digital products. And we co-created the Child Online Safety Assessment Tool, or COSA, so other companies can understand and embed the protection of children's rights online more effectively. And a key focus of that partnership is to continue to understand how we as a company can respect and support children's rights online and offline, and together advocate for best practice. Now, I'm here today to share the LEGO Group's ambition in providing quality digital play to children and families. In addition to developing digital experiences to children for 2 decades now, the LEGO Group recently announced that we've joined forces with Epic Games in a partnership to create a digital play experience for virtual worlds, and to ensure that every child can be a celebrated, confident creator through digital play. And this partnership is underpinned by 3 guiding principles. The first is around protecting a child's right to play by making safety and well-being a priority. The second is designing with the best interests of children at the front of mind. And the third is empowering children and adults to have control over that digital experience. Nowadays, childhood flows in a very rapid way between digital and physical, and with the social lives, entertainment, and educational needs of children increasingly found online. And this trend will only amplify and grow as virtual worlds become more immersive and ubiquitous. Society and governments have understandably and appropriately prioritized children's safety in the current online environment by focusing on identification, assessment, and mitigation of the risk of harm to children. This is critical, much needed, as today's online world was not designed with children in mind, and at most points, frankly, is not appropriate for children. But we do not believe the only thing needed for children to benefit from the online world is to reduce harm. Reducing harm is a necessary, critical, essential component of well-being, but if protections are held in isolation, this risks children's access to the other benefits that can foster their well-being. And doing so is potentially against the human rights-based approaches more generally, where these aspects are connected and of equal importance. A recent US Surgeon General report referenced how the ability to form and maintain friendships online and develop social connections has demonstrated positive effects for children. On the other hand, sterile digital experiences that prevent young users from fostering a sense of online community can have negative consequences for their mental health. As noted by the UK Digital Futures Commission report around child rights by design, which was led by Professor Sonia Livingston and under the auspices of the Five Rights Foundation, and I quote, "While media headlines call out the most egregious risks of harm to children, less attention is paid to the missed opportunities to benefit children when digital providers neglect their child users." Now, given the importance of technology to children and the discussions around immersive tech, Metaverse, and various AI systems and applications, I believe we can develop a more thoughtful approach towards meaningfully anchoring children's rights and their well-being at the centre of digital innovation, supporting them in seizing the benefits of participating online. The concept of well-being has long been synonymous with the overall health of a person, with the WHO defining health as not just of the absence of disease, but also a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being. Well-being has also widely been accepted as a key component of experiences that are in the best interest of the child, and is increasingly recognised as an important factor in creating positive online environments for kids. We care about this passionately at the LEGO Group, so to help industry on this mission, in deepening understanding of how to design digital play that fosters children's well-being, we join forces with UNICEF, with leading academic institutions, to form the Responsible Innovation in Technology for Children project, otherwise known as RITEC, and this is supported by the LEGO Foundation. This initiative worked across 13 markets, talking to children to develop an understanding of well-being in the digital era. And our early research showed that digital worlds built in the best interests of the child not only mitigate harms, but empower kids, nurture their creativity, build their competence, promote diversity and inclusion, and develop emotional regulation, as well as fostering social connections. The emerging findings of this project, that digital services which place kids at the centre of their design are supported by a growing body of work that emphasises the importance of responsible free play in digital worlds. The next research phase of this project is happening this year, and it digs a level deeper to understand how digital play experiences impact on the child well-being outcomes of the framework. From this, the project aims to provide businesses with access to evidence-based tools that will enable design choices that can positively influence aspects of children's well-being. You can search UNICEF RITEC in a search engine to read more about the project. The reach and immersive capacity of virtual worlds underscores the imperative of a well-being by design approach. Creative online experiences where children are transported to new environments, socializing with their peers while they build, learn, and overcome online challenges, together can help kids acquire 21st century skills and develop as model digital citizens. And while the harms that children may face in virtual environments must be mitigated, governments and providers also need to balance these risks with a new category of harm, which is uninspiring digital experiences that do not enhance children's well-being, but instead prohibit their access and stunt their development and growth. Therefore, if I may, allow me to share my 3 recommendations for your forthcoming report. Firstly, and I think most importantly, it's about explicitly recognizing children as a distinct group of users and content creators in these digital environments, as well as securing their ongoing input and creative involvement in the design of virtual worlds such as the Metaverse. This is part of how we work at the LEGO Group. We regularly consult with kids, and we find it taps into the most incredible insights, imagination, and frank dialogue. Second, the reach and immersive capacity of virtual worlds such as the Metaverse underscores the imperative of a well-being by design approach. And here I see 2 tracks. So I think the report should underline a call on governments to stimulate and incentivize child-centric digital innovation in support of children's rights and well-being. As risks of online harm continue to evolve and new risks will emerge, or existing ones will change in nature and scale, it's essential to anchor children's rights and their well-being in the design of digital worlds. And the second is industry must play their part. They must secure rigorous safeguards across their services as a non-negotiable, but not stop there. We must all look to build on safety by design in a way that enables children's access to the considerable advantages of technology to children, providing positive benefits to their well-being. My third recommendation builds on the global nature of the online environment. As a global company with a European heritage and headquarters, we appreciate international exchanges to secure information sharing, international cooperation and standards aligned with human rights and democratic values ultimately advancing efforts for global harmonization. I'd like to conclude by acknowledging that at the LEGO Group, we're on a journey. We don't have all the answers, but we strongly believe it is critical that we create a blueprint for the online environment that can both protect and nurture children's potential. We believe we have an opportunity now to learn from the past and make sure that the next wave of digital innovation, such as the virtual worlds and the metaverse, are designed for children, with children. Using well-being as a priority objective for digital innovation and design has the potential to usher in a much more sustainable, human-centric future for the builders of tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Luyun. Now we can open the floor for discussion. Who would like to take the floor, please raise your hand, or, yeah, please, Mr. Smoljak.
Thank you, Chair. I will write this word, metaverse, to the Google, and I will specify the last answers from the last week. And the answers are the titles of the articles. Metaverse is dead. Metaverse is not dead yet. And Mark Zuckerberg's Metaverse project dies after 18 months. So maybe it will be interesting to ask GPT, OpenAI, what is the future of Metaverse, but I can't join it. But that's my question. Is it still relevant, the future of Metaverse? Is the risk and opportunities of the Metaverse serious, or maybe it will disappear in a short time?
You can answer both. It's, yeah.
That is a great question. So the president of the IEEE Standards Association is working in this field for the last 30 years, and that was one of the questions I posed with all the news and all the redirection that is happening currently at the company's level with generative AI. And so I think there are two levels. One is the importance that the acceleration in, for example, the developments in generative AI could also fuel further development of the metaverse. So this is one aspect. And the other aspect is that we are seeing a situation where that is not just in the metaverse, but we see this also in the metaverse, that we used to know what is happening in terms of R&D from the publication of scientific publications. And we see this strongly since the AI, that there is a lot of private R&D happening, which unless there are some patent applications, it is very difficult to track what is going on. So I would personally find this very difficult to believe that all these investments that were made into the metaverse will just collapse. I think it will be good to be prepared for it. So we have been talking also with the industry to see their take on that. And while it is not, it seems that their priorities lie currently somewhere else, this is not, they have projects going on. So this is the information that we have.
I think if you ask various industry experts around a definition of the metaverse, they have very different takes on it. And whether one company is having questions raised about their investment does not speak for the whole industry. I think what isn't in doubt is immersive virtual environments are here to stay and they will grow. And we are certainly seeing that in our interactions with children, children are spending more time in these spaces. And that's why we felt it was an imperative that at the LEGO Group we work with a great partner to try and create a space that is specially curated for them with the safeguards and well-being considerations that I talked about in my intervention. So no, I don't believe immersive online environments are dead. But as I say, different companies may have different pressures on them.
Now I take a question from this side, Mr. Hussaino.
Thank you, Chair. Dear colleagues, I'd like to share some of my views on this very interesting topic. The power, influence, and pressure possibilities of the digital world are numerous. The ability of the virtual world is to damage, change, and devalue values is also undeniable. At the same time, the virtual world is capable of breaking established criteria and boundaries. The digital world definitely takes our real world from our hands that disregarding us and destroys the traditional concept of the world inherent in human society. On the one hand, this seems to be an increase in transparency, a transition to an allegedly more democratic space. However, democratic values are universally recognized and valued network. At the moment, the most frightening aspect of the fact that the metaverse can be controlled and directed by some forces. This signifies an extremely serious threat to democracy, the system of moral values, and the social order as a whole. Any destructive force that has the ability to influence the digital world has the ability to cause chaos and conflict in such a phase-free space, open paths to various crimes and moral suffering. If there is such a real danger, we must not stand idle. Effective action is to save the metaverse, this boundless sphere from uncontrollability, to eliminate extreme freedom, to ensure the establishment of effective laws and stable legal norms in this sphere. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. No question here. Mr. Valentin and then Linda. And okay, yes.
Yes, thank you for your interventions and explanation as experts about Metaverse. It's quite impossible to talk about Metaverse without talking about AI, and you also did it. But I'm the spokesperson on EU matters in my party in Denmark, and we are discussing that AI perhaps should not be talking to children at all, because it's very difficult to control it. And EU is working on a law that will somehow regulate this. And I'm sure that you have read into that. And so my question is, what do you think? Should AI be in touch with children? Should we regulate more? What do you think about the approach that EU did on this matter?
Iran, maybe you first.
Yes, so if you're referring to the age-appropriate design and the ongoing work, it is actually, IEEE has developed a standard on age-appropriate design, and the thinking of the Standards Association leadership at the time was, it is not possible that we cannot identify if we're dealing with a child, also to the point of Edward earlier, and we should really protect, we cannot just treat them as just the market segment. We should protect their rights. Now the question, I think it would be around to what extent can we cut out AI from everything? Because again, talking about definitions, AI is in so many, AI models are embedded into so much software that I think it would be very difficult to go backwards. So the first step is, of course, identify when children are dealing with digital platforms, for example, that we are dealing with a child. And there, the other problem I would see, I think we have seen this with the GDPR as well, is the question of what is the different ages, even within Europe. Like, as of which age are we referring to children, or up to which age can teenagers have access to what? And from which age can they consent to, for example, participating in the different interactions with a metaverse? So I would see this as a very valid and not an easy point to tackle, but I think certainly it should be considered how we deal with this point.
And
I think it's an important question, and one where policymakers so far haven't been able to work out how to align incentives around design choices. So far, our efforts to regulate technology, the technology, perhaps understandably, is already out there, and we're trying to shut the door while the harms have begun. And I think we have an opportunity here with regulation on AI, with regulation looking into the metaverse, to get those incentives in place for designers to think about choices upfront, including for children. And I think you make a very important point, Irina, as well, about the differentiated risk profile for different children. Because the risk for a 15-year-old is not the same as a risk for a 7-year-old. And we shouldn't assume that it is, and we shouldn't also not expose our kids to any sort of risk in an online environment, like you don't do that in a physical playground where understanding risk is part of development. So I think there's a very nuanced conversation to be had here with industry and government on how do you get the incentives to align around design choices and make sure that children can benefit from these technologies, frankly, that are coming and that are already here, but also protect them and consider their safety, rights and well-being.
Thank you. Linda?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And sorry for my absence, but I had to have a doctor appointment in the Metaverse, the hospital appointment today, so that's why. But thank you very much for coming to this hearing, and also as the only company. We appreciate that very much, that LEGO do that. My question is, are there any relations between the different companies and industries when it comes to protecting human rights and children? Do you share information? Do you share incidents and so on? Can you say something about that? Thank you.
I think this is an important point to raise. Firstly, I mentioned the RITEC project. Forgive me, I wasn't sure if you were in the room at that point, but we're collaborating with UNICEF and other universities around a project that sets out a design framework so that designers can make the right choices for children's safety and well-being up front. And that, while we are driving that project, we are making it all open, and we want it adopted by industry because we want the bar raised on design choices that industry are making for children. So absolute transparency in that work. We're publishing all the work online, and we hope that it gets adopted. And actually, would like policymakers to also use that as a tool to drive that adoption. In terms of incidents, I think it depends on the company, right? I mean, we will share with obviously authorities if we have any incidents on our platforms, and I think there are forums where companies can share those incidents, but I think it depends on the company that's involved. Some guard this pretty tightly, and that may be an area to look in from a regulatory standpoint, because of what we find is the sharing of best practice drives up standards, and understanding what we're facing, understanding ways that nefarious actors on these platforms can find a way in, potentially, should be shared among actors so that we're understanding of what the threats are out there.
Thank you. And next one, I think Karine was, yeah.
Thank you. I want to come back to the other point about artificial intelligence. As I understand it well, there is a big risk that artificial intelligence like ChatGPT interferes in the metaverse. So if you have a conversation in a metaverse with a friend or a colleague, whatever, it's possible that the other person uses that, or that it's being used in another way. I think this is dangerous too for adults, not only for children. I'm very happy that you're here from Lego, etc. But we also have, when we work on this, to think about what about the adults, because you don't know it anymore. What is, what is real and what is not real. It is not real. It is another world, you said, so another universe. But I think the interference with that artificial intelligence thing we are having more and more last months, ChatGPT everywhere, that makes me very afraid. And the thing is, what can we do about it? What can we do about it? And we are looking especially at, both of you can answer, of course, but I'm very curious, what can we do? Yeah.
We talked about the definitions before, and I think even if we were to leave the generative AI aside, already with the rest of what the underlying technology, the techniques and the functional applications of AI are, for example, the fact that you will have already, I think we saw in case law the whole discussions around, for example, you have your phone next to you and it's an active microphone. Is it listening all the time? So the whole discussions that we have been hearing about, which is already embedded in our phone, in other hardware we have in our homes. There was, for example, a security threat from the gyroscope, from the VR, wearables. So the security threats that can come in, I think we may be aware of some. Some we will be discovering as we are, and this is why we think it is important to involve the technical community in the discussions, to hear, also to shape the consciousness and the awareness of policymakers and the audience and end users. There are other issues such as augmentation, for example, of your what you can see or what you can hear through the wearables, which can help on one side. So the dual uses of the technology, it can help persons with functional limitations, but at the same time, for example, you can hear all of a sudden things you would not be hearing from people who would be too far. They would perceive you as being too far. So this is why I talked in my intervention about the new definition, a new approach to all these terms. So we are using the same words, but they will be meaning something different. So for me, the generative AI is just one layer and one aspect of risk. And this is what makes it so complex. But that's why we should be talking about it.
And if I may bring it back to children, I think this is why special provision is required for children in this space. And if I can give you an example, so we have a social media platform specially for children called Lego Life. And if a child downloads that application, they can access some content. But if they want to interact on it, if they want to post, if they want to comment, they are then instructed to get a grown-up. And that grown-up has to go through a process of verified parental consent, which is either providing some ID, which we then verify, or increasingly, as some of the tools out there that you refer to have got more powerful, we will use different tools as well. So we're experimenting with facial ID to ensure that, that the kid is a kid. And then they can do the more expansive activities on the social media platform. But if I can also sort of flip this slightly, you were talking about AI. AI is actually a very useful tool in this as well. So for the moderation of content, on that platform, we pre-moderate everything that's posted through human interaction, but also through AI. It helps us filter very, very quickly to go through the content that people want to put online. If we didn't do that, we'd be in the boring, sterile digital environment that I talked about in my remarks. It would take too long for the child's post to go up online. So AI is a helpful first tool there, which we can use to ensure that the platform remains appropriate for children.
Ms. Hart, right?
Thank you. Just So in the UK, we've got the online safety bill that is progressing through Parliament at the moment, and some amendments were laid in order to strengthen the age verification process for children, particularly to safeguard children. It requires platforms to verify the age and consent of the individuals. It removes platforms' ability to set their own standards. So it's quite interesting, Mr. Lewin, when you talk about your platform for children and having the age verification and consent, because obviously there is a risk of paedophiles using that platform and engaging, but actually there is also a risk of children accessing platforms that aren't appropriate for them. And I think we do all have a duty to ensure that we put the safety of children first and foremost when it comes to the Metaverse, online platforms and anything else. So it'd be interesting to hear what other countries' plans are on that.
I think the online safety bill, hopefully it's going to get through Parliament. It seems to be taking a long time. Is pretty strong on this point, and we welcome that. I think where I have reservations and a slight, frankly, disappointment about the legislation that's coming through is that it is pretty much squarely focused on harms. And I agree with you, harms should be the #1 thing that we're looking at in legislation. But there was an opportunity with the online safety bill to be first and to be really progressive and to align those incentives around rights and well-being in the online world. And I fear that where we are now on the latest draft, I know there are some amendments floating around that could improve this, it's going to remain there, and I think we could be doing better. I think we could be even more forward-looking and making sure that designers are taking on well-being, with safety as a core part of that, in their considerations, and the bill doesn't do that right now. Yes, I'd love to see that aspect of the bill strengthened.
Jen, and afterwards probably the closing remarks from our rapporteur.
Thank you very much. I was really interested to hear LEGO are using AI and a human element to moderate a chat room or sort of online profile of children. Have you, I'm going to say something else before, but I'll put your question at the beginning. Have you had any complaints of bullying behaviour? Because AI can't spot everything. And some comments that, you know, no specific word would stand out as being bullying, but in context, and if it's continuing when a child goes home from school and it's someone they know and it's something that looks innocuous but isn't, and I just wonder where LEGO is with the complaints around that. But before you answer that, I think the Metaverse has such enormous potential for things like education, and for sort of all of us to spend leisure time and be entertained by it. But it is a technology that will advance so quickly. Legislation has not a hope in hell of keeping pace, and I think the online safety bill, we will see more amendments connected to the Metaverse potentially. And I wonder, in terms of safeguarding for children and for adults to an extent, we just don't know what the potential is, and those studies on the psychological effects of normalisation if you're playing a violent game, if it becomes very, very normal and it's your reality that you're stabbing somebody, is that particularly healthy mentally? I think all of those questions, how parents can monitor what their children are doing within the headset, because while they may give permission, I'm not sure that's an easy thing for parents to monitor or to be aware of what the technology is able to achieve. I wonder what hacking will look like in the Metaverse. I wonder what manipulations are there potentially. My colleague Raphael made some points around this same issue. I'm wondering what the potential for bullying is, and new types of pressure, harassment, and stalking potentially of domestic violence victims. There is a whole other world, it is literally a whole other world, and our legislation and our ethical treatment of that other world will not keep pace with the technology that is already available. So I just your comments on the sort of children, when I was little, it was watching videos that your brothers got and they were older than you. Children don't just stick to children's things, so we know if there's a video game available for grown-ups, children will be playing that as children on Facebook before they should be. I think this is a very, very difficult thing. Age verification is not infallible, so I just welcome your comments about how we, as legislators and as politicians and industry, keeps pace ahead of some of these very fast advancing things. Thank you.
I recognise so much of what you say, not least as a father myself, and I think the big difference today is that kids can't escape. If they have a problem at school, they take the mobile phone home and it carries on in the evening. And that's a really troubling dynamic that I think is what today's generation is facing. If I can first of all just take your question about the Lego Life platform. Key to that platform is that kids are anonymous. So you don't actually know that you're talking to little Johnny in the classroom. You're talking to Purple Cauliflower 64 or some fun name. It's all anonymous. And so that we break that chain, if you like, if it exists, of what happens in the physical world and what happens in the online world. And then we also have certain features on the platform. So we've got a character called Captain Safety who will intervene. And if I can answer your question very directly, do we see some bullying? Yes, right? You get kids on the platform, you're going to find that there are some nasty comments sometimes. But the key to that is early intervention, particularly with young children. So we have Captain Safety. Captain Safety comes in with some very nice messaging, tells people to either take time out or ask them to perhaps position something a different way, or if it gets really bad, then the pre-moderation will kick in and we won't allow the comment on the platform. We also have various other initiatives. We launched something a couple of years ago called Build and Talk, which is actually where we use the Lego brick to start conversations between parents and children around concepts like cyberbullying, privacy, all those aspects that actually, if you ask parents, do you talk to your kids about online hygiene? Parents spend a lot more time telling their kids how to cross a road than they do how they should behave online. And we're trying to redress that dynamic. And we think the Lego brick's a great medium of doing that. So we provide all that free on our website. So there's various things we've got going on in that space. But your concerns are valid, right, about the broader immersive online environment and the metaverse. I certainly think they are. And your concerns particularly about kids accessing platforms that are not intended for them. Really important. And in my view, the platforms have got to recognize that. Because if you speak to the platforms, they will say, well, it's not intended for kids under the age of, whatever, 13, 16. But yet you know that kids are very active on it. But this not intended line appears to absolve them of responsibility. I don't think that's good enough. I think we've got to do better than that. And kind of throw that as a challenge to policymakers on how you get that done. But I really think that kind of washing your hands through a term and condition is not the right way forward. I think we've got to be much more caring as a society of what our children are exposed to.
I think that a lot of the issues you raised, they have been reflected in literature, and while we're working with very fast accelerating technology, I think we are in a better place than when we were when internet, things were much slower, one must admit, But at least we are not, we have some ideas about what may be augmented or exacerbated in relation to what we see now. And we have already seen some platforms where a simple chat function could turn into adults and pedophiles creeping into, children platforms. So I think the other aspect you mentioned was the parents. So I think it is the question like who holds responsibility, and my personal view is that it should be distributed. You cannot just hold the issue that you raised, that you cannot listen to what your children are listening. And I think it goes back to values in the sense of you talked about well-being, but how do we define well-being? Because for some parents, they may be learning things, or some aspects of some apps or gaming. There are recommendations for age, which I guess are linked to liability, but I think that is an aspect to consider. Are recommendations enough?
Thank you. So now we come to the closing remarks. Mr. Christia, would you like to take floor?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will have some comments, some remarks, and I will ask then Madam Verity McIntosh to address questions, the last questions for our guests here. So from a human perspective, from a human history perspective, network dynamics that are internet mediated is a brand new phenomenon, and I'm afraid that we don't have the tools and we don't have the cultural instructions to cope with this new reality. I would like to say that we have a huge elephant in this room, because I would like to mirror what myself and distinguished colleagues put forward. We should, we must, we have a duty, it is important to, and I could continue, but all these phrases had in the last part of their construction to have a dialogue with industry and government. I don't see the industry here. And of course, we did what it was possible to do to invite them, but let me ask you, how can build a constructive approach when you don't have a dialogue with the industry? I don't expect any kind of answer. Now, I believe that we have entered an area and an era of acceleration of expectations, not satisfaction of needs. And this is only, this is the idea I have in my mind when I'm discussing the absence of the representatives of the industry. I also like to very quickly point that the architecture of our information systems has been flattened in the last 20 years. And also I believe that our worries about technologies and about this particular piece of technology, Metaverse, is actually worries about the capitalism. What I have in mind, the technology itself is non-deterministic. It can be used to do positive things. It can be used to inflict harm on other actors. It's not the technology, it's the people. Technology itself and Metaverse is just an extension, and it serves like an amplifier of human behavior. So we should focus on this side of the story. I also believe that the greater the technologies, the bigger the abuse. And this is something we should have in our mind, and I will for sure have it in my mind when drafting the report. We live in a crisis of trust. We are MPs from national parliaments who are part of this space and this committee on culture, science, education, and media. And just think for a second. We are trying to have a dialogue with those actors who actually build the technology, and we don't have that. And my point is that it's a group therapy at the end of the day. I would like to invite Verity to address questions to our distinguished guests.
Thank you, you're very kind. It's a pleasure to see some of you again. I was fortunate enough to speak to you in March in Paris, and I'll be continuing to work with you on the expert report that Mr. Christier is developing. So thank you for allowing me a question. While we have our expert guests with us, I wonder if you wouldn't mind commenting on the tricky question of jurisdiction in the metaverse. As we are aware, these metaverse contexts are often sort of built and provided by a particular platform or publisher. They're often hosted by a different application. They are then visited by participants from around the world. So by the time we get to what Ms. Murray was referring to as kind of these metaverse crimes, metaverse laws, metaverse justice systems, it's incredibly unclear where the jurisdiction is to act, to respond to such behaviour and the challenges of behaviour that were just so elegantly described. So I wonder if either of you had thoughts about how individual nations and bodies such as the Council of Europe might better understand jurisdiction and how we can make meaningful intervention into a space that has such ambiguity of jurisdiction.
Thank you. That is indeed a big discussion, and that is a similar discussion that was held at the end of the 90s with what was at the time called internet law, what is now the digital law, and the jurisdiction and places of crime. And of course, with the difference now that the supply chain is much more complex than what it used to be 25, 30 years ago. So this is one of the discussions we have been having with the experts about the need to do a mapping of the different, like, hardware, software, the supply chain of the metaverse, even if it is so complex, to understand what we're dealing with. Because if we need to, for example, use a service that it gets redirected to 100 APIs, it is going to be, and that's why I just mentioned the term enforceability, but actually it's also in the attribution of liability, it was hinting to this big issue. And I think we are at this phase. It is also normal because we are rather early on with the metaverse, but I think we are talking more about the concepts, and we should look a little bit into the reality. How is the architecture? You talked about how does the architecture look like? And I think that these were also some changes with experts, like as a thought that it could be like a mapping exercise could facilitate addressing the issues, because otherwise, if they are too abstract and theoretical, we run into the risk of either over-regulating, overreacting, or the other way around. So that is one consideration.
Yeah, I'm afraid I haven't thought too hard on that particular issue, but I think a related one that is really important and is referenced in your report, Mr. Christea, is around interoperability of experiences. It is critical that there is interoperability, that no one company is able to colonize this space and wall the garden. But that also in the case of children, that the settings that they have with them follow them, so that their experience wherever they go in that metaverse or in that immersive online environment is a suitable one for them. You can't have a clean space and then them go somewhere else which is entirely inappropriate. So slightly different from your particular question, but I think nonetheless a very relevant consideration.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for participating. And I understand that Professor McIntosh would be available to cooperate with the rapporteur and produce the report later this year. So I hope the committee can agree. See no objections. Thank you for your input. And I thank all of our experts for your time and the work you do and contribution that you made for Mr. Christia's report. And we wish you every success in your work. Thank you. So now we'll have just a few minutes break before we need to